What's up, guys? Here we go. We're going to start talking about section 2 here, the main topic of it. Now, you already know this over here. When we're multiplying these guys, and if we wrote it in standard form like we did in our discussion in class, all you would do is, you would just double distribute. You distribute the x, or you use the FOIL method, whatever. So x times x gives you x squared, and then the outside, so this here gives you x squared. I'll actually color code it for you. So then I do last times last, which gives me negative 2x. Beautiful. And then I would take these guys right here, the insides times each other, and get positive 7x. And then the last one I'll use, I don't know, let's use purple, like dark purple. Nah, we'll use orange. So we'll go 7 times that guy would give me negative 14. So if I added all these together, my final answer just would be simply this, x squared. I put these like terms here together, which gives me 5x minus 14. Now here's the scoop. I'm showing you all this, guys, because what you're going to learn in this particular video, and you need to study this, make sure you take detailed notes, write all the examples down, and go through everything. Don't just skip through stuff. I'm going to show you how to take this thing again and rewrite it back into this form where we call it the factored form. So we're going to factor this guy back into these two binomials. And as I said in class, guys, it's no different at all if I took something like, 6, and I said, hey, let's rewrite that into a factored form where we had the product of two things. You all would tell me all kinds of answers. Here's one, 2 times 3. Or you could do negative 2 times negative 3. These are factors that when you multiply, it gives you 6. Same concept, guys. Same exact concept. No difference. So in this section, what you're going to see is we're going to see how, answer the question, how do you factor any quadratic expression, a square term, it's given like this in the actual cloud, and we're going to take that written in standard form, we're going to take that and rewrite it as the product of certain things. Now, it's not always going to be two binomials. There's some special factors, but that's the general concept. So let's dive into this bad boy, and you're going to need your foldable, because on your foldable, you're going to see at the very top it says, how do you factor quadratic expressions written in standard form. By the way, let me slide this over, because here is the example right here that I want you to actually write down on the right side of the actual sheet of paper I gave you. And this will be the example that we keep going with, the running example, as I give you the 7 steps here. So here we go. We're going to take this thing just to be understanding what we're doing. Let me get rid of this PowerPoint for now. I'm going to take this thing and we're going to write this guy, which is already in standard form. We're going to rewrite it eventually as the product of two little binomials over there. Now, there might be something in front of this little parenthesis, but that's the general idea. We're going to take this goofy thing and rewrite it like that. So here we go. Step number 1. We're going to factor out the GCF. That stands for greatest common factor. That's right, greatest common factor. We're going to keep it for later, and you'll see. So in this example here that I have, well, let's see. I have a 6, I have a 20, and I have a 6. What is the GCF, of 6, 20, and 6? Well, the greatest common factor isn't 6. Yes, 6 goes into 6, but it doesn't go into 20. 3 works because 3 goes into 6, but 3 doesn't go into 20. The biggest one that goes into all 3 of these is actually just a 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2, which basically means this. When I factor out a 2, I'm going to undistribute the 2 from all 3 of these terms. AKA, what I'm doing is I'm just dividing each of these by 2. So I'm factoring out. I'm undistributing. I'm unmultiplying. The reverse of multiplication is division. So therefore, when I take out a 2 of the 6x squared, I'm going to get, well, first of all, let me put the GCF in front, and then I'm going to get this, 3x squared. So I take out the 2 from the 6. I divide the 2 into the 6, gives me 3. I divide the 2 into the 20, it gives me a positive 10x. And divide the 2 into the 6, it gives me a positive 3. So there you go. So first step, again, back to this. First step is to factor out the GCF. And we're going to keep it for later. So this goofy little 2 right here, this guy, we're going to keep that thing for later. Just keep in mind it's still there. Okay, so let me get rid of that. How do I do that? There we go. So step number 2, here we go, baby. Step number 2, we're going to fill in the top and the bottom of the big X. What do you mean the X? You mean these guys right here? No, I mean yes. Draw a huge X like that. So I'm going to do it down here on the bottom left side. So I'm going to draw a big old X right. I'm going to make it white. And so there's my X. So what in the world goes in this X? It says to fill in the top. Well, it says to fill in the top and the bottom. But what is that? Well, the top and the bottom is this. Here's the top. You're going to take A times c. And that number, when you multiply the product, that number goes on top of the x. What's the a and the c, Mater? Good question. It's these things. It's the a right there in front of the x squared, the coefficient, and the actual constant term. So in my example over here, all I'm focused on, I'll use yellow, all I'm really just focused on is this. From this point, that guy, right there. So I am actually just focusing on this trinomial because I've already taken out, I've sucked out the GCF. So I want to look at this A, this is my B, this is my C. So I take 3 times 3, as again, this says I'm doing A times C. So I take 3 times 3, so that gives me a 9er, right there. Okay, so what goes in the bottom then? Well, if A times C goes on the top, then B goes in the bottom. B for bottom. That's pretty simple. Wait, I'm not multiplying anything? Nope. You're just taking straight up whatever this B is right here. And the sign goes with it, just like the sign would go with the C. So if this was a negative 10 here for B, which it isn't, but if it was, I put negative 10 down here. It just so happens that it's a positive 10. So I'm taking the B and putting it downstairs. So I'll put it right here. So at positive 10. Okay. So we got that ready to go. So we got AC, we got B. Step number 3. It is the work step, as it says right here. You are going to find paired factors, aka really just factors, of this AC, so of 9. You're going to find paired factors of 9, meaning 2 things that multiply to give you 9. That's going to add to give you this number that's down here in the bottom x, so the positive 10. So 2 things for 9 that I can multiply to get 9, but they got to add to 10. Well, here's the options. I mean, if I used, I don't know, I could do, for 9, I could do 9 times 1. That's it. I could do 3 times 3. They're paired factors of 9. But again, you're looking for these 2 things that also add to give you that middle term. And right, oh, this is it. So there they are. So I got a 9 right here, and I got a 1 right there. So these are my paired factors that when I do this, my paired factors, that I put one of them there, and I put one of them there. So 9 and 1, I could put 1 and 9, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the order. That's what's so beautiful about this. Okay? So, there's my paired factors. I got them. Now you're going to say, what in the world do we do with that? Good question. So here's step number 4. Step number 4. I'm going to use those paired factors, 9 and 1, that I just found in step 3, and I'm going to rewrite the original quadratic. Now I should rewrite that because it's not necessarily the original quadratic, not this thing up here, not in yellow. I'm just writing this thing right here that's in parentheses because that's what I actually created this little X thing over here for, not the original thing, just this guy. So I'm going to rewrite that, but notice this. When we do it, it just simply breaks up the middle term. So watch what I'm talking about. So I'm going to use different colors. So I'm going to take this thing right here. The 3x is going to stay exactly the same. Actually, you know what? Let me use the same color so we don't get confused. So I get 3x squared. So what I'm going to do now, though, is take these paired factors, these guys, and I'm going to take the 10x, and I'm going to break them up into those 2 paired factors, where this is going to be 9x, and this is going to be 1x. What are you talking about, Mater? Here's what I'm talking about. This 10x goes to a 9x. This 10x, part of the 10x goes to a 1x. So all I'm really doing, again, is just rewriting the 10x into those 2 like terms. That's it. And then the plus 3 over here to the right stays exactly as it is. So that right there is step number 4. I took my paired factors, and again, it wouldn't matter if 1 is right here and 9 is right there. I just make this one 1x and that one 9x. It's still going to work out. It's beautiful. So that's it. So there is step number 4. So step number 4 says I do all that. Here's step number 5. I now factor out the GCF from the first 2 terms and then the last 2 terms. So as you just saw the red boxes fly up there, the first 2 terms is what is right here, 3x squared and 9x. So I'm going to focus just on those, and then I'm going to scoot over. Well, I'll just stop. Let me just focus on those. So let me use white. So just these guys. I'm going to focus just on these guys, and what I'm going to do is factor out the GCF of just those 2 terms. What's the GCF? Well, the GCF of those 2 terms happens to be, a 3 is 1, because 3 goes into both of these, and they both have an x in common. Greatest common factor. So when I pull out the 3x, I'm dividing this by 3x. I'm dividing that by 3x, which means when I pull out a 3x of this, in parentheses, I'll use different color, I get a x. Because again, if I check it really mentally, quickly, 3x times x gives me that. Beautiful. So I'm sucking out the 3x from that, and I'm sucking out the 3x from that, which would just leave me with plus 3. So there is your first thing that we had to deal with according to my steps. I factored out the GCF from the first two terms. Now let's focus on the last two terms. So the last two terms happen to be these guys. So I will encompass the actual sign. So now I got to look at these and say, what's the greatest common factor in 1x and 3? Well, this is an interesting one. That's why I did the example. The greatest common factor among those is just a 1. So I'm going to suck out a 1. I'm going to suck out a 1 of this. So therefore, I'm going to put plus 1. I'm factoring out a 1 here. I'm factoring out a 1 here. And when I do that, I'll put that in parentheses. Boing, boing. I'll use this. So when I factor out a 1, I just get x. Okay. When I factor out a 1 here, I just get plus 3. Beautiful. So again, just do a mental check. There's a couple places here I'm going to tell you that you want to do like a little mental checklist. So now stop, collaborate, and listen. Just kidding. Stop and make sure that you just did it right. So just mental math, multiply this back through and make sure you get 3x squared. Make sure you get 9x. Make sure you get 1x. Make sure you get 3. Like mentally do it to make sure you're right. And you can see that we are. So beautiful. Let's move on to step number 6. Essentially, as it says, you're just really going to repeat step 5, where we're going to find the GCF and factor it out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've color-coded it for you. And you can see, if I look at this particular first term, I'll use dark green. So if I look at this whole thing, yes. And then I use the red, this whole thing. So with the red and the green, you see something that's in common from the red part and the green part. You got it. I color-coded it to stuff in blue. So that stuff in blue is a common factor. So guess what? That means I can factor that thing out and put x plus 3 because it's a common factor. So there you go. And then the remaining parenthesis, because remember what we're doing. We're writing it as the product of two things. So I've already got the first one. X plus 3. All I need to do, whoa, yuck. All I need to do is find the second set of parentheses. Well, where's that come from? Oh, it's right here. So this thing here stays right there. And this thing here, including the sign, stays right there. Oh, it's so lovely. I love this. So there it is. So 3x plus 1 goes right there. Now, that is all my steps up to this point. You can see I've done all these steps. However, as you notice, the GCF from step 1, if applicable, will go in front of the... Wait, hold on. So, I'm getting ahead of myself, but here's the scoop. Remember, we pulled out of the GCF. Remember I told you this little 2 right here? We don't want to forget about that goofy little thing. This funny little 2. Yep, we can't forget about that. That is really kind of encompassed with this last step. If I pulled out the GCF from step 1, well then, by golly, that little 2 has got to go right in front of these little parentheses. So right there, I'm going to put my little 2. Bing! So I really have, let me write that a little nicer, 2, and then in parentheses, x plus 3, and then in parentheses, 3x plus 1. So that apparently is my answer in factored form from this thing that was given to me in standard form. How do I know if it's right? Well, I just assume it's right. No way, no way, no way. Don't be lazy. Step number 7. You have to check by foiling this thing out. Whoa. Well, let's do it. So let's foil it out. I'll move this over. So I'm going to foil this thing. First things first, you betcha. Let's do this. Let's take these guys and foil it. So that means I'm going to have 3x squared. That's all in parentheses because I still have this 2 out here I got to deal with later. And then I'm going to do outers. That gives me plus x. I'll do inners. That gives me plus 9x. And I do last times last. That gives me plus 3. Beautiful. So when I combine my like terms, that gives me 2 outside parentheses, 3x squared plus 10x plus 3. Nice. Let's keep going. All I have to do now is take that 2 and distribute it. So the 2 goes here, the 2 goes here, and the 2 goes here. When I do that, I get 6x squared. Hey, check. Look at that. plus 2 times, say, 20x. Oh, looky here, looky there, looky there. And then I take 2 times the positive 3. Oh, bingo. Happy, happy day to you. So there you go. So it is exactly what I started with. Therefore, I did factor it correctly. So my answer is this thing right here in complete factored form. That is beautiful. Now, I'm going to do another one. I'm actually going to stop this video and do another one. Actually, I'm going to present it to you right now. Let me just scroll down a second. Okay, so here it is. I want you to factor this one. Ready? Factor, 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 using the steps. So here they are. I'm going to give you this guy. Let's go. X squared, got me, minus 6x plus 8. Now there's an easy one, but that's factored. So you do it. I'm going to pause this video. You go through it and see what you get. Now, matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on the screen here, but I am actually going to do it in a speeded up fashion. So you pause it. You go through the steps. Do exactly what we did. Practice the steps and see if you got it right. So, good luck and enjoy watching me do it. Boom! There you go. Hey, by the way, this is an extremely important thing to write down. Don't know if you saw this or not, but here's a checks and balance for you. A huge checks and balance. Write this enormously in your notes. Enormously. Enormous. Whenever you do your step where you are taking the first chunk and factoring out the common factor, and the second chunk and factoring out the common factor, if you do not have the same exact thing in these parentheses, like this, you are absolutely incorrect. You did something wrong. So right here in the parentheses, they have to be exactly the same because that's what factors out in your last step. I'll go back to the first example. Same thing up here. Notice this. The things in parentheses, they were exactly the same. They have to be. If they're not the same, then you did something wrong. So there you go, guys. Rock and roll. We're going to practice these in class. Oh, yeah. And we're going to get very, very good at factoring these trinomials. Pumped up. Later.